Good evening and welcome to this digitally enabled online special meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, held on Wednesday, November 22nd, 2021. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg, and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes as 7 p.m. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live and stream and the archived version. The chair and/or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Thank you. Welcome to those who are joining us via the YouTube channel. Welcome to counselors, staff, and consultant who will participate in this meeting tonight. I invite your decorum. I don't believe we have any regrets. I think we're a full complement this evening. So let us move on then to item 2.1 pertaining to pecuniary interest. I think we should do that, right, Pat? For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practice, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with pecuniary interest to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. Is any in our group this evening desires to declare a potential pecuniary interest? So we're not seeing any. That means we're going to move forward. We don't have a lot of resolutions to consider this evening, but still we will try to seek consent from various councillors as movers and seconders of those that do show up on our table. I'll do this to some degree alphabetically, and should a councillor not wish to respond to the request, they may say so, and I will move to the next name on the alphabetical list. Of course, we continue, as we have for many months, to invite councillors to identify themselves, to speak through our conferencing technologies chat function. The clerk is assisting me as usual in maintaining the speaking order from that source. Councillors are allowed in their turn to deliver a primary question or comment and may make one supplemental without intervention from me. We'll follow that speaking order as usual fairly carefully, and any councillor wishing to have it set and say will have to indicate again and go to the bottom of the list. This is a normal process consistent with Robert's Rules of Order. Councillors are reminded that if you're not audible, I'll let you know. Further, we ask councillors to maintain a mute state in the web conference until I've called upon you for a verbal reaction or giving you the floor. Should any of your votes not show up in eScribe, I'll call on you when things seem stalled to register a manual vote. At that time, take yourself off mute, answer yes or no to the motion, and then return to mute. Regarding item 2.2 of our agenda, let me just check that my numbers are matching with what's on the agenda here. No, actually, it's item 3 on tonight's agenda. There we go. I'm very patterned, apparently. I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting that reads as follows: that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Can I call on Councillor Johnston to be our mover for this?
Yes, I would move that.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson, will you serve as our seconder?
I will second that happily. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this matter? Seeing none, let's have that vote.
I'm Mayor Todd. I have no e-scribe. Maybe someone can reach out to me, but I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Kellum. We've got him recorded. Are we missing one here, Clerk Perkins? Councillor Rothwell, what are you connected with us? What say you?
I'm connected, but my vote didn't come up. I am in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that vote, that is carried unanimously. I'll ask Simon to reach out to Deputy Mayor Kellum to see if we can troubleshoot for him. As well, then let's move forward to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 4, reports. And I just want to sort of advise all that we are addressing a special theme tonight, the development of a human resources strategy, sometimes called people or an HR plan. This is consistent with the mandate that Council set for itself in our corporate strategic plan. I will say that I believe this to be one of the more important initiatives that this Council will undertake during its term of office. As item 4.1, we will receive reports from our CAO and from consultant Carrie Sharpin of Ward and Updegrove. These reports formulate the basis for beginning to harden the organization against the buffets of human resource challenges that are sweeping other sectors of our economy, including the municipal public sector. At this time, then, I'm inviting North Perth CAO Chris Snell to orient us to the information available for the development and implementation of an HR strategy. Mr. Snell, I'm going to rely on you to call forward the people that you feel need to address this agenda meaningfully, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So I'm briefly going to review the report presented tonight by staff, and then I'm going to turn the meeting over to Carrie Sharpin from Ward and Updegrove to run through a quick slide deck. And then Jen and I will be available after to answer any questions Council may have. So as the Mayor has stated, North Perth has experienced difficulties over the last 24 months with staff recruitment and retention. Particularly in children's services, public works, and facility departments. Voluntary turnover has increased with staff exiting the organization for reasons related to compensation, career advancement, and full-time opportunities in other municipalities or the private sector. And as a result of this, we've also had a tough time in the recruitment process. And primarily, the majority of our human resources are actually being effectively just to recruitment, filling vacant positions. So as the Mayor said, we've worked with the HR committee to present a plan that both achieves the strategic goals in Goal 5 of the North Strategic Plan, as well as try and come up with a plan to address some of our retention and recruitment issues. So the first would be the presentation of the mission and vision statements. I won't go through them line by line, but we did add trust to the vision under the subheading of safe. And working through the 2022 work plan, we have presented the organizational structure, which Council has seen in the past, as well as did some work around what the succession plan would look like in the first year, being 2022. Around attraction and retention programs, we, because of the tight turnaround, we didn't have an opportunity to expand a whole lot on what the details of those programs will look like, but we have committed, if Council adopts tonight's recommendations, that we would bring back the details for Council approval in 2022. The Chief Administrative roles and responsibilities will be changed, that the Council would approve the organizational structure for CAO, Director, and Manager, and then the CAO would have control of the organizational structure below that. And then outlined in the financial implications are the costs for the program going forward. And like I mentioned earlier, any of the program enhancements would come back once we have the details of those programs for Council approval. So that's a very quick recap of the report, but now I will turn it over to Carrie, and she can shed some light on what's she's seeing in the sector and some solutions that council can consider.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me okay? Good evening, Council. Thank you for having me again. Tonight, I'm abbreviating the closed session presentation that we made, and I just have a few slides. I want to recap HR strategy very quickly, and some of the things that we covered in the November 10th closed session that was presented. So tonight, I want to focus on a few major themes: municipal sector, the HR context, and what's happening in our municipal world currently, and of course, what's happening for North Perth, and the proposed approach that's contained in the report, and really just to give some key points to council on being a catalyst for change and leading the curve in terms of the recommendations that are being made by staff. So next slide, please. So it's important, I think, before I get too far into these points, to remind council that this is a discussion that's framed in the idea of being the employer, not just community members and involved in delivering services to our public. We do that through our people, and the framework of being the employer is relevant to all council members here, as well as the staff in presence. So to start off with the municipal HR context, we have for many years now seen a lot of focus traditionally in the municipal sector to focus on those tangible assets, the bridges, the roads, and to have bare minimum staffing budgets. What I mean by that is, no spare persons to take on extra work. Really just making sure that the services are being delivered, and not specifically North Perth, but all municipalities in the last years have been thinking more in bare minimum staffing. Development of staff was limited, and municipalities were happy to look for qualified candidates outside of their organization. Likely they didn't have people prepared for the role, and the situation of poaching has reached an alarming level. We see this mass exit of boomers, and we have very few next generations entering into the municipal sector, and the smaller and increasingly smaller pool of ready candidates is what we're facing. And that is evidenced in some of the reports and statistics that we presented to council in our last meeting. My observation is this: poaching and municipal price wars are very much evident across so many municipalities, because people are not prepared within a succession plan. Municipalities are looking outside of their organizations, and in order to attract someone to come and work, the easy answer is increasing pay, and we're seeing this just accelerating over the last even 12 months. We're seeing a change. On top of it, the private sector is highly competitive. So those of you who are in private sector, it's impossible to find ready staff. It's competitive for non-skilled and skilled labor. So not only are we seeing North Perth losing employees to other municipalities, which is quite common, we're also seeing a loss of people to the private sector. Next slide, please. So municipal councils should be alarmed. There should be some concern over the fact that the competition for labor and the price of labor is increasing and stands to get much worse. The quality of hire is a key statistic that we'll look at in HR, and the quality of hire could go down significantly if North Perth is unable to attract the qualified individuals they seek. Turnover of staff, we see people leaving, and that's another important statistic for council to keep in mind, that when you lose one person, there's a vacancy that occurs, which has an impact on the people trying to fill in the gaps, and a loss of knowledge and a loss of productivity. And your leadership team and your staff are the ones filling in those gaps and keeping things going as we attempt to fill those positions. One other statistic that I didn't mention is time to fill positions. That's a really important KPI, and time to fill gets longer and longer as it takes more time and more effort to recruit a qualified candidate. Eventually, you'll see an impact on your services. There will be no staff or a vacancy that will impact the ability to deliver the service, but overall, your staff will be doing more with fewer people, and that will eventually have some impact on your ability to deliver those services. COVID hasn't made things easier either. I thought I should mention that our world has changed and turned upside down, and we have several unknowns on top of all of these trends we're seeing in the municipal sector. Next slide, please. So I'm here to say that North Perth should be concerned that there have been some recent KPIs and statistics from the HR department showing that there's a progression where things are getting worse. And I believe, based on what we're seeing in the sector overall, it is just going to continue. And there's really no end in sight at this time. We're hearing from North Perth candidates that they have better employment options elsewhere, and that's really an alarming message, because North Perth has traditionally been an employer of choice, and some of the statistics that we presented showed that increasingly we are not their first pick. Finally, you should also be concerned that you haven't implemented Goal 5 of your corporate strategic plan. As you know, it ends in 2022. There'll probably be some sort of refresh. And I think that Goal 5 is a very important goal. And it was geared to HR strategy, succession planning, and aligning the organization. So, unfortunately, what we are seeing is, and everyone should recognize this next slide, that your HR department and your staff, your leadership team are putting out fires in terms of filling those vacancies and getting people to be into the role and to be productive. And we just see this accelerating even more if North Perth can't find some ways to keep and attract and retain their people. Next slide, please. So the proposed approach in the report talks about a work plan, and they're created to really address issues highlighted by current staff and exiting staff. I am, as a consultant, aware of several other situations. The two you see on the slides here are from newspaper articles, so that's common knowledge, but I am aware of other municipalities who are looking at the 60th percentile and other strategies to address the similar drain they're seeing from their people in the challenges with recruitment. So we're starting to see a shift, and it is important for North Perth to find a way to differentiate itself from the other municipalities. And we believe that the recommendations we're making for 2022 are very good ones, and will give the municipality some time to figure some things out and to assess the labor market in say 6 to 12 months and see what's changed. Has it gotten any better, or in fact, like I'm predicting, has it gotten worse? So next slide. So I have to say also that the pay philosophy could still be a necessary change. So currently, just a reminder to all of council, the policy is middle of the pack, the median of its comparators, which is a great compensation strategy, has been a great compensation strategy. Unfortunately, we are seeing other municipalities approaching a different philosophy, paying above market. And of course, we know what the impact will be. It will be increasing rates of pay. So the pay philosophy may still need to see some change, but certainly for 2022, the recommendations are very targeted to some of the challenges that we're seeing with attraction and retention. If North Perth were to implement the 55th or 60th, please understand these are very rough estimates, but certainly, significant costing impact to get to that 60th percentile and be competitive with what we're seeing as an emerging trend in municipalities. And finally, my last slide, I believe. I just want to say that action is necessary, but a cautious and measured approach is what I'm observing in the report, that the recommendations give staff an opportunity to try to attempt some changes and evolve their HR strategies to quickly adapt to the changing labor market. The danger of being caught behind the curve could result in extreme loss of staff and that inability to fill vacancies, and ultimately have some impact on service delivery levels. So what I'd like to say is that action is a must, but for council to take a cautious and measured approach, which I believe has been created in the report as a very cautious and measured approach. Any questions for me? Thank you, everyone, for having me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sharp. And CAO Snell, did you want to wrap up here as after that presentation, and then we'll open to questions and comments?
Certainly. Thank you again, Mayor. The recommendations at the end of the report are to approve the work plan, approve the recommended organizational structure, approve the CAO roles and responsibility changes, and then that the organizational structure, costs, and succession planning are included in the 2022 budget, and that the HR program enhancements are also included in the 2022 budget, with program details be brought back for approval. That really at this time, that's really the end of my presentation, unless Jen has any comments that she'd like to make.
I don't have anything to add at this point.
Okay, thank you very much.
So we're all available for questions.
Thank you very much. All right. Council, let's proceed then with some questions before considering the resolution draft that has been prepared for our thought and work tonight. Please, the floor is open, and we'll work from a speakers list that's going to maintain. Clerk Bearfelds, do we have anyone who has put forward yet for asking questions or making comments? Councillor Richardson, you're first.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Kasenberg. Thank you, Carrie, for a very good presentation again. From sitting on the HR committee and understanding all of these facts, I think council has been presented with some very good information that shows that we could be in for a significant or the entire municipality could be in for some significant turmoil that if we don't start to adopt some changes. And I do understand that there will be some cost involved with that, but we're not alone in the municipal sector as far as the proper retainment of staff. It is a very challenging scenario, and there's a lot of it. You talk to any employer that is out there, of which we are an employer, that are having a significant difficult time in retaining skilled and eligible staff. So I think that, in my honest opinion, that I think this is the best direction to go at this time for the municipality and the greater good of the corporation. That I do feel that it is absolutely necessary, because we could be several resignations away and not the ability to fill them, and we would be in a totally different world if we think COVID has turned things upside down now. The municipality could be in a totally different realm if we lost a handful of key staff right now, given the circumstances and the challenges that we are under. So I do think that we are in a position to make some beneficial change moving forward, that hopefully that we can mitigate some significant flounders going into the future, that I'm just hoping that we have the time to do that right now. So that's my 2 cents from HR perspective, my HR perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Do we have any others, Clerk Bergholz? Councillor Seiler is next.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I guess, Gary, the question I have is on the poaching. Whereabouts do you see this poaching? Is it happening in our Perth County, or is it happening outside of Perth County? Do you have any information on that, on where this is taking place? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Seiler. I think I'll turn first to CAO Snell, since he has an opportunity to chat with his CAO colleagues in the area. Chris?
Certainly, and as Carrie mentioned in her slide deck presentation, it's always been, unfortunately, a technique that's been used by municipalities, especially a little bit larger municipalities, is that we'll just steal from our neighbors, and that they'll be sort of our employee pipeline. Certainly, we've seen that in the past, even within Perth County, with employees moving between municipalities. It's happening somewhat in the local Perth jurisdiction, but certainly we're seeing it around us in the counties that surround us. Certainly, North Perth has always sort of been a leader and an employer of choice, and so we've probably even used that practice in the past, but unfortunately it's becoming much harder for us to sort of use that as a technique anymore. And unfortunately, as the world becomes a much smaller place, it's even harder for us to compete against some of the larger municipalities. So we're either offering sort of work from home programs now, or commuting isn't as difficult as it once was. But certainly we are seeing this happen. We're losing, I forget the exact percentage, but about almost half of our people are leaving for another municipal jurisdiction. The other half are going to the private sector. Thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Sharpen, did you want to weigh in on this? Because I mean, you did a little bit of data crunching and assessment of the market, right?
I don't have any ready statistics, but certainly the movement within the municipal sector is well known that you know, it's not necessarily so much about being contacted to come work for another municipality as it is to just look at Municipal World and shop for a better paying or slightly better opportunity. So if you want some statistics, I think we had talked, there were how many job ads the other day on Municipal World? Was it 62 or some just new positions in a single day? So I'd say statistically that would be a good measure to help you see where the challenges are and competition for your people is coming from.
Thanks. Ms. Robinson, did you have anything that you wanted to weigh in besides the fact that we've also been beneficiary from time to time of poaching?
I think that Chris and Carrie have covered this well, but certainly we are seeing staff movement and and also have you're right, use this strategy on occasion also. So nothing really more to add than that. Thank you.
All right, I think Councillor Barnes is next.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, through you. Carrie, thank you once again for the information. It's greatly appreciated. And Chris and Jen for yous as well. And I appreciate the report and it being set out. Having had the opportunity over the last couple of days to actually really review the information, I like the changes that were made and certainly agree in principle to almost everything that's been said. Um, my only concern is that's a large motion, and I'm just wondering if, and I'm not saying that we have to do it individually, but that covers a lot of ground and a lot of detail in the one motion. And really, my understanding is what you're asking for is certainly the mission and the vision and the work plan and the organizational structure and the changes to the CAO, but then you're simply asking for what's been discussed here tonight in the program enhancements and the organizational structure actual implementation to be included in the 2022 budget. So one is just simply really giving direction, but the other one is approval. And I didn't know whether it would be more pertinent to separate those two out. But I will go with what everyone believes is proper. Thanks.
Thank you. CAO Snell, did you have any comments about what appears to be a request to consider splitting this motion and from a procedural perspective?
But certainly, and certainly Jen and I have had this conversation that we could have made a number of single motions or one motion, and certainly I think as staff, if it has to be split, we're okay with that too. I don't think there's any hesitancy in staff to do it that way.
Is
Just
there an advantage, Councillor Barnes? Did you want to pitch an advantage to splitting it, or?
No, it's just that it's a very large motion, and I don't want it to get misconstrued as to what was actually approved and where the direction was given, if you're understanding me. Like we're basically giving approval to the first half of the motion, but then we're simply giving direction in the second half. So I just wondered if those two could be split. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for individual motions for every item. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. That doesn't seem like a problem. Like Clerk Kerfels, do you see any reason not to just make that adjustment? So Pat's saying that it seems procedurally reasonable. Thank you. Let's move to Councillor Rothwell next.
Thanks, Mayor Todd, and thank you, staff and Carrie for the presentation. I just want to talk specifically about, or question, I guess, specifically about the issue of our recruitments and what's called poaching and the loss of some of our staff. As I understand, a number of our staff have that we have had this work with us for the municipality have done a great job, and some of them have done extra courses and so on, and made them ready for the next step of a leadership role. And frankly, if there's no ability within our municipality to see that growth of their professional growth, they will look somewhere else. And I think that's the issue that I want to hear from our staff about, is that it's a difficult situation when we're talking about keeping and retaining our staff, and then when they get to the point and there's no ability to go into the next role, what do we expect from those staff? I mean, yes, we can pay them more and so on, but if they need to leave us to find that other opportunity to become a manager or a director or whatever level we're talking about, I mean, that's something that's going to be ongoing, is it not?
I can certainly take the first shot at this, Jen. So, and certainly I think those are sort of the experiences of the past that people, when they reach a certain point in their career, um, if we can't provide the opportunity to them, they will look elsewhere. Interestingly enough, we haven't really experienced um, a ton of turnover in our management and supervisory positions, although some of that has happened. Um, Really, a lot of our turnover actually is in frontline. Um, and so they're not necessarily moving for management or supervisor positions. They're making lateral movements. And secondly, to help also develop a plan so that we can keep some of those staff that we have targeted for management positions. That's really the intent and creation of the succession plan. We've talked about succession planning for a number of years, but we've never really implemented a full plan that we can both show staff the plan so they know the future or the potential future, but also we haven't had a very good plan corporately. Jen may want to add something.
Ms. Robinson?
Thank you. Thank you. I think what I would add to Chris's comment is that um, through the succession planning exercise, I am envisioning that secondments and multi-departmental project committees and um, just really innovative and creative ways to keep people engaged and critically thinking as they develop their skill set will become part of what we do. Um, Historically, we haven't had the staff capacity in order to allow that kind of movement to occur within the organization. And through the succession planning program development, that is where I see that we can start to engage those special skill sets and help grow and develop, which will hopefully retain also by keeping them engaged and critically thinking. So hopefully that answers your question, Alan.
Thanks. Councillor Rothwell, anything further on this one?
Just related, if I may, if supplementary, Mr. Mayor, when looking through the lens of work-life balance, which Carrie had spoken about, and certainly our staff have as well, have we actually looked at work-life balance and what that means for our existing staff? And does this mean that we're going to be needing to hire more staff? Or what's the realities of work-life balance? Because the expectation that staff have is that it would be some additional staff to shoulder the burden, as opposed to having many extra hours of work done at the same rate of pay. Can you just talk to us about that for council? Thank you.
CAO Snell, did you want to sort of direct traffic on that or take that one directly?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Rothwell. I mean, I think the approach is multi-pronged, and certainly we haven't done a ton of research into this, but I think that was really what Zora was trying to get at with her 4-day work week, was trying to improve the work-life balance of staff. There's something that probably didn't cost the corporation a lot of money. I assume they've probably split the work week up if they can maintain the same service levels for the most part without adding a whole bunch of staff. But like I said, we haven't spent a ton of time on that yet. I also think one of our solutions is technology. We are trying to look at technological features that will improve our efficiency to allow at least the same amount of staff to do the same amount of work. And then I think also part of the reorganization was looking at aligning like services so that we can at least become more efficient in our service delivery model. Now, having said that, there's a whole bunch of other pressures that still continue to impact, whether that be growth or downloading or those are the two most obvious things that still may require us to add more staff for whatever reason, if the daycare expands or I want to go back to even the Steve Kerr Memorial or Steve Kerr Arena. When we replaced the Listwell Memorial Arena, we haven't really upstaffed that building yet, but yet it's about 25% larger. That sort of staffing model only lasts so long before some of the things start to not get done. It may not be noticeable in the first 5 years the building's open, but it will be noticeable in the long run. So as we continue to grow and improve our services, we may require more staff, but that certainly will be a future budget discussion. Jenna, do you have anything to add to that?
Maybe just a quick comment. One of the things that COVID has allowed us to do is to experiment with different working models. So we've really became accustomed to, out of necessity, working from home, really embraced flexible work days, flex time, and that has been, as Chris said, allowed through our use of technology. So again, that innovative way to thinking about what our workday looks like, I think we've seen at least has assisted our staff through COVID, and has showed us that we can be more flexible and accommodating to the work life needs of the staff.
Thank you.
Thanks, team. And I'll say that I think this council has shown a lot of wisdom in its term with regards to digital transformation. We've undertaken a number of projects and continue to fund and have allocated sort of a steady stream of funding for IT and digital transformation. And so we're going to continue to see what gains can be brought there. At the same time, we must always remember that we're in a business that helps people and makes a difference in the lives of people. So we can't completely lose the people touch. I think one of the interesting challenges in terms of the staffing model, if you will, that lies ahead and as a consequence of growth is that it's a very imperfect equation. You wind up with a need for 46 hours of full-time work in a specific role, but you have an employee who's on contract or a full-time employee who's working 37 and a half or 40 hours. And so how do you get that extra, 10, I guess it's 10 hours. So, a partial FTE, it's a very imperfect equation. And I think that's going to create some interesting challenges too. We'll be thinking a lot more about pools of employees and sort of, a possibility of omni-competence, which has its pros in terms of allowing small organizations to achieve more, but has its cons as well in that people in those situations need to have the right temperament and personality and disposition, and if they don't, they'll find their way to, as we saw, someone down the street who might have a little bit more functional specialization and a little less stress. So there's certainly some interesting HR decisions that lie ahead with regards to the municipality, and it's always difficult to try to bridge gaps where there's these little proportions of duties that need to be taken care of, as we've seen certainly in our term. Any other comments or questions at this point? I'm going to use sort of mayoral privilege and act on Councillor Byrne's advice to split this motion into two. I hope council will object to that. I think it's a useful suggestion. So if you take any questions or comments or criticism of my decision on that at this point. We're not seeing anything further. So let's do this in two parts, as I suggested. I've sort of tweaked the resolution here. So The first part is going to be essentially the same as what we saw, the first three conditions. It reads as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the HR mission, vision, and 2022 HR work plan, and that Council approve the recommended organizational structure, and that Council approve changes to policy A-1.3 CAO roles and responsibilities. Can I call on Councillor Rothwell to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I so move.
Thank you. Councillor Seiler, will you be our seconder for that one?
Yes, I'll second it. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Opportunity for further discussion and debate on this one. Okay, I'm just sort of being respectful of the clerk's efforts here. I know that she needs to do a little bit of manipulation in eScribe, so you'll give me the cue Pat, when you're ready. You ready? Okay, so Clerk Fairfields is ready. Let's have that vote. Need to jump to their window to see what's going on. Yeah.
Councillor Ansted here. I don't know if mine went through, but I'm in favor. Thank you.
It did. Thanks, Councillor Ansted. Looks like you're connected now. So that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Let's consider the second. I have slight wording revisions here, Pat, just so you know, but we can catch those on final minutes here. Here's the draft, Council. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth direct that the proposed costs of organizational structure implementation and succession planning be included into the 2022 draft budget for Council's consideration. And further, that the proposed costs for the HR program enhancements be included in the draft 2022 budget, with program details being brought forward for approval by Council. Any comments about this motion? Did I miss anything or mess it up? We see anything, Pat? Okay, so Councillor Andreessen, can I call on you to serve as our mover for this one?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Anstett, will you second this one?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, discussion and debate on this one. This is the one that has some cost implications. Anyone wishing to leap into this? All right. We have it duly moved and seconded. Let's just remind what we're doing here. Proposed costs of organizational structure, implementation, and succession planning be included in the budget, and also the program enhancements included in the budget with the program details to come forward. It's moved and seconded. We're not seeing any comments further, so let's have that vote. Councillor Rothwell, maybe? There we go. And that is carried unanimously as well. Council, thank you very much for coming in for a special meeting this evening to address some of these mission critical opportunities that we have ahead of us. That brings us to agenda item number 5. Council has a mandated good practice acts near the end of its meeting to confirm its actions and business through what's called the confirmatory bylaw. I have a draft of that one here that reads as follows: that bylaw number 128-2021, being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed. That the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Behrens, can I call on you to serve as mover?
Yes, I will move that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And therefore, Council, we come to the end of what was laid out for us on our agenda. And we have taken action on the business that did come before us. So I have a motion for adjournment. It reads as follows: that the council meeting adjourns at 7:50 p.m. '21. Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our mover for this one?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I would second that.
Thank you. It's not a debatable motion, so let's have that vote. And with that vote, that is carried. That means that we can certainly call this meeting adjourned. Council, I remind you that there is a budget committee meeting on Wednesday evening this week with Councillor Rothwell. Chair, I trust that you'll attend. And until that point in time, thank you and be safe on the roads.
Mr. Mayor and Council, just want to remind you to look at the revised email that came out for the flip book for preparation on our meeting on Wednesday. So hopefully everybody got that. Just check your emails. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.